Merhaba değerli izleyiciler. Anadolu'da sosyal işletmecilik kapsamında bugünkü konuğumuz, davranış değişikliği ve sosyal pazarlama alanlarında gerek teori gerekse uygulamada dünyanın önde gelen isimlerinden biri olan Profesör Jeff French. Kamu ve özel sektörde faaliyet gösteren işletmeler ve kar amacı gütmeyen kuruluşlarda 35 yılın üzerine bir deneyime sahip olan Profesör French'in davranış değişikliği, sosyal pazarlama, toplumsal gelişim ve sosyal iletişim konularında çok sayıda akademik yayını bulunmaktadır. Kendisi aynı zamanda alanda bilinen çeşitli dergilerin editörlüğünü de yürütmektedir. Ayrıca İngiltere'de sosyal pazarlama üzerine faaliyet gösteren bir şirketin yöneticiliğini de yürütmektedir. Bugün de kendisiyle sosyal işletmecilik ve davranış değişikliği üzerine konuşacağız. So, Professor French, welcome to Anadolu University.
Oh, thank you.
As the first question on topic, could you please define what social business is?
Yeah, social business is a broad field of study and application, but I like to think of it in three parts. So the first part would be what business can do, commercial for-profit business, how it can run its business, make a good return on its investment and for its shareholders, but also do some good, some social good, because without that, companies don't have a license to operate really, and they won't be sustainable. So it's about what private sector for-profit organisations can do, as well as making money, doing some good for society. So that's the first part. The second part is really the application of good business practice within the NGO or not-for-profit sector. So people like charities and foundations, how can they run their business, which is for social good, but do that in a business-like way? And the third area really is what government can do. Government should be there for social good, of course, but it should also run its business and the programs that it facilitates or runs directly in a business-like way. So all three of those blocks are about the application of business principles for social good. And if they all work together, of course, if the government and NGOs work with the private sector, they can also make more profit. So this is kind of a virtual positive kind of cycle, if you like, of for-profits, not-for-profits, and governments all working together for good economic growth and wealth creation, but also for social good as well.
Thank you. Then how does marketing shape the social good that you have just mentioned?
Well, marketing, if we have those three areas of social business, marketing is a silver thread, if you like, that runs through all of those things. And marketing is about creating value for people. Lots of companies, commercial sector, for-profit companies, run what we call parts of their operation that create social good, like corporate social giving, sponsorship, those kinds of things. But they need to go beyond that to look at actually creating value for people. So not just activity that supports the company's brand or product sales, that corporate social responsibility area. If they can go beyond that and start creating value for people, that's where they can really make a positive contribution to society. But what does that value mean? Well, to understand what the value is, we need to understand the citizens that we're trying to help and work with. So one of the big marketing contributions to all of those three areas is helping to understand what people want, what will help them, what won't help them, what products or services or goods will enhance their lives and make things better, and what things will maybe make things worse. So if we understand that through doing good market research, understanding citizens and customers, companies, NGOs and governments can work together to create wealth and do social good.
Thank you. You will be talking about making good social choices easy and desirable. Could you say why and give some examples on it?
Yeah, it's good commercial sector marketing, of course, is about creating exchanges with people where they give you some money or some of their time and they get something positive that they value back from that, a good or a service or a feeling of well-being. So if we're trying to create that kind of sense of well-being with people, again we need to understand not only what they value, but how they will behave. And what we know is that making things easy for people, a lot of commercial sector marketing operates on that basis. We do things that are easy and pleasurable. But sometimes we can also use that principle for not-for-profit organisations and for government interventions. Some examples would be, if you want people to give to charity, what we know in terms of human behaviour is that once people make a commitment to do something, they're much more likely to keep doing that thing, because we like to think of ourselves as being consistent people. So if you want to encourage somebody to give to charity, asking them for a big amount of money is very difficult for some people. So what many charities do, and you may have experienced this yourself, the first donation that you're asked to give is very small. And there are some campaigns where they say, just donate €1 or 50 cents or 1 lira. So if we make the first step a very easy step for people and they start to give, what we know that next time we go back and ask them to give some more, they're much more likely to do it. So human beings are, we're lazy a lot of the time, and we like things to be easy and simple to do. So if we can make good social choices, positive social choices, easy choices to make, that's a much better way of getting more compliance with those things. The more difficult, the more complex, the more disincentives we put into social programs or creating social good, the less likely it is that people are going to do it. So we have to make things simple, enjoyable, pleasurable, using some of those commercial marketing techniques in not-for-profit and government programs. And also as part of creating social value in the business sector, if we want to kind of do some good in a community, let's make it easy for people to be part of our program.
Thank you very much, Professor. Then what do you think government's role is here?
Yeah, government has a number of roles. Of course, the traditional government role is to help regulate markets. It has a function in terms of both the charitable, not-for-profit sector and the for-profit sector. It has a role to make sure that markets run fairly and that people are not cheated or bad practice doesn't happen. And that's its kind of principal role, across those three areas. But it also has a big role in terms of direct program delivery as well. I'm sure the Turkish government, like my own government in the UK, run lots of big programs. In the UK, about half of our GDP is spent via the state, and a proportion will be similar, I would have thought, in Turkey. So things like schools, hospitals, fire and rescue services, the armed forces, police, all these are kind of social programs run by the government. And I think what the government is probably less good at in many countries is understanding the people that it's seeking to serve than the business sector are. Because in business, if you don't really understand your customers, you're not in business for very long. You go bankrupt very quickly. So you really need to understand people and create goods and services that they like, enjoy, and want to buy. If you work in government, it doesn't quite work like that. Every 3 or 4 or 5 years, there's an election, and you get elected, and then you're in power, and you can do more or less what you want to via your mandate. So there's less of a direct incentive for governments to listen and understand and respond to citizens on a continual basis. But that's changing, because we have new technologies now that allow citizens to connect with each other and give continuous feedback to the government. We have lots of social media, we have traditional media, and the voice of the public is getting louder and louder. And also, as citizens of the world, we demand more from the commercial sector and from governments. So really the relationship between governments and citizens is changing to be more like the relationship between customers and companies, where there's a more direct, immediate connection. So what this means is that governments going to need to start to act more like businesses. They need more real-time information. They need to know what people value. They need to know what kinds of social programs people will support or react against. And there's a lot of learning from both the commercial sector, particularly in marketing, market research, and also the not-for-profit sector that governments can learn from to be more responsive, to understand their citizens more and provide social programs that citizens value, support, and will comply with.
Thank you very much, Professor French. Then what should governments do to build more effective interventions? Yeah,
well, given what I've said about what governments need to do, I think there are a few concrete things that they could do more effectively. Governments, the Turkish government and many other governments, spend at the moment quite a lot of money understanding the big social challenges that they face. They invest in research that identifies the problems around health and education and transport and other issues. But they spend much less money, in fact, a tiny amount of money, on understanding what their citizens think and what their citizens will support. So I think, and that's the exact opposite of what happens in the commercial sector. If you think about the research spend in the commercial sector, it's all about understanding what's going on inside people's heads, what they want, what they believe, what they trust. These things are really important if you want to sell products or services to people. So governments, the first thing they need to do is put more effort into not just describing the problem, but understanding some of the solutions from citizens' perspectives. Mm-hmm. And if you put enough effort into listening and understanding citizens, they'll often give you the solutions to the social problems. And sometimes that means you don't need to legislate. There might be a different way of solving a social problem if you really understand how it's affecting people. The second thing they should do is start to move towards what's called outcome-focused budgeting. Many social programs, when you look at the budget and you ask, why are we spending that amount of money on that program? The answer usually is, that's what we could negotiate, or that's what we had last year, so we get the same again and maybe up for inflation or down a little bit. That's crazy. That's not the way you should budget. In the commercial sector, if you want to achieve a new product or a marketing program, what you say is, what are we trying to achieve? And then how much money do we need to do it? It's the other way around. We decide on what the aim is, and then we build a budget to deliver that aim. Mm-hmm. And in the government sector, we just say, here's a block of money. What can we do for this block of money? So, and then we don't know whether that's good value for money or not. So the second thing I think government should start to do is try and break out from traditional historic budget allocations and start to think more about what are our big social goals? What are we trying to achieve? And then building budgets around those things. And the third thing I think government should do is really, if they're working in areas where there's not a good research and evidence base, and they're investing money in interventions, what they must do is research, evaluate, and track those interventions to do two things. One, to see whether they work. Is this a good program? Is it delivering its objectives? And secondly, is it good value for money? Are we spending the least amount of money we can to get the good social program? Because if we do that, it means we've got some resource to use somewhere else. So I think if we do those three things, government programs would be much more effective.
Then, Professor, how about social marketing?
Yeah, social marketing is really the application of commercial marketing techniques and approaches to social programs. But it's a bit more than that, because it's not just taking commercial sector marketing and applying it. It's doing that, plus it's taking lots of learning from the social program area and putting that in as well. And social marketing can be quite a sophisticated process. It's a kind of rigorous planning process where we are clear about our aims and objectives. We pilot, test, deliver, and evaluate. So a standard kind of planning kind of process. But it's based on a series of key principles. And the three important key principles are customer-centric or citizen-centric planning, understand the customer. Exchange. What exchange can we offer people in return for a positive social behaviour? Or how can we reward them in such a way that they will undertake that social behaviour? And the third key area is competition analysis. If we're trying to encourage people maybe to not smoke, or to not drink alcohol, or to eat healthily, we need to understand what the competition is. What is trying to drive those people to smoke, eat too much, maybe drink alcohol? Because part of our program is not just with the individual, it's looking at all those other environmental factors that we might need to tackle. So that may mean restrictions on promotions of things like alcohol, maybe, or tobacco sales, as well as encouraging individuals not to do those things. So it's the application of marketing and social planning principles to create systematic programs to deliver social good. That's what social marketing is.
So, Professor, regarding the things we've talked on the topic, is there anything else that you want to discuss that you think we haven't covered yet?
Yeah, there's one last area I'd like to discuss. At the very beginning of the presentation, we talked about there being three groups of people that we should think about: for-profit sector, the not-for-profit sector, and government. And all of these have a contribution to play clearly in improving the world, making the world a better place. But what we need is for those three sectors to work more closely together in a coordinated way to create some of the social value that we need. Now, sometimes government works quite well with the not-for-profit sector, provides funding and support and so on. Sometimes the private sector works with the not-for-profit sector to do social good. And sometimes the government works with the private sector. But often those connections are not very strong. And there are some good examples from around the world. If you want to tackle big social issues, things like obesity, for example, one of the two really good examples, one in the UK, one in the United States of America, around what they call building civic coalitions. So there are formal structures put in place where the private sector, NGO, and government can all come together to work on big, complex social issues like obesity. And that doesn't just happen. What we have to do to make those coalitions work is just like we would in business-to-business collaborations on marketing. We'd put effort and resources and teams of people together to act as the glue between those three sectors. And I think if governments, the private sector and the NGO sector can come together and invest in some time and effort to making better connections, we can create more effective social programs.
Thank you for your kind attendance and your important sharings on social business and behavioral change. Değerli izleyiciler, Anadolu'da sosyal işletmecilik kapsamında Profesör Jeff French ile bugün sosyal işletmecilik ve davranış değişikliği üzerinde konuştuk. Bir başka programda farklı bir konu üzerine görüşmek dileğiyle.